Gods Unchained is a new blockchain trading card game made by Fuel Games. And while there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here, maybe it's a little bit too good to be true. We take a look in this video brought to you by a+space Games. Gods Unchained is a trading card game built on blockchain technology. I imagine a lot of you don't know about blockchain gaming, and that's fine. You can learn more about it in the video that's linked in the description by extra credits. It's really great, but you really don't need to know anything about it in order to follow what's happening in this video. The important difference is that you actually own the cards that are associated with your account. They are tradable, you can do kind of whatever you want with them on different exchanges, not inside the game. They're also immune to nerfs and changes after they're associated with your account, and you also have advantages like provable rarity, you know how many of a given card actually exist in the whole world. When I was first learning about Gods Unchained, somebody pointed out to me that there's a very generous referral code system which gives you 10% of the money spent by somebody else who's using your referral code in the game. That's not in-game currency, that's not cards or anything like that. That is cryptocurrency that you're actually getting that you can then turn into real-world money. This sounds like a pyramid scheme to me, so I decided to look into it more to see if there was anything shady going on. As I began to research it, I saw that there were a lot of news stories about how much money they were making. There was a $60,000 card that they auctioned off. There was $1.5 million worth of cards that were sold in the pre-sale. And it took me a while to realize that there's no gameplay footage for this game that is available, and it seemed crazy to me that people are spending this much money on a game that isn't out yet, and we don't know anything about how the gameplay actually functions. So that really piqued my interest, and I decided to dig in further. This video summarizes some of that research, talking about the history of the studio and the other game they produced, talking about their approach to card design and card balancing as well, and finally talking about some of their plans and giving you an idea of the trajectory of the studios. This is, of course, all a summary of an article that I wrote. You can find that in the links below, but this will give you a pretty good idea of the fundamental arguments that I lay out there. Let's start by talking about Ethereum Boss, the first game made by Fuel Games. This was released in March of 2018, created a lot of stir within the crypto gaming community because it raised a lot of money, so how about we check up on the Discord and see how they're doing now? Huh, that's funny. Well, how about the Reddit? Let's see if there's any activity on Reddit. Doesn't look like it. Not very many updates in the last couple of months. What about Twitter? Maybe they're active there. Seems like the last update was in May. That was a couple of months ago. Now, one of the things is with this game, we can actually see how many people are playing this game on a regular basis. And if you actually look at the numbers, it looks like it's like 5 to 10 people per day is really the frequency with which people are playing it. Now, it should be pretty obvious to you from this that the game is functionally dead. Basically, nobody's playing anymore. And I actually went out of my way to find people who had played the game and get their impressions. There were two groups, largely. The first one, people who tried the game, enjoyed their taste that they got, but then realized how expensive it was and then stopped playing basically immediately. The second group, people who actually invested in the game, their comments were, yeah, it was pretty expensive. Many of them spent thousands of dollars on the game, even though it was only around for a couple of months. They said that the devs couldn't solve some of the problems with the platform, and they were missing deadlines. And while they said that the game was fun to play, it was functionally dead even by May. So while Ethereum Boss did make a decent amount of money, it's hard to say that it was anything other than the failure, given the fact that it was dead in under 6 months. So not a great start for our friends at Fuel Games. So how about now we move forward to Gods Unchained? We may not have very much in the way of gameplay footage, but we actually do know what a lot of the cards do, given the fact that they revealed all of them, basically. And the contents of the Genesis set is pretty concerning, given the fact that there are a lot of cards that very closely resemble cards that come from Hearthstone, which isn't a very good look. The card that stuck out to me the most was specifically the Revenant Lynx, which is the exact same as the Astral Tiger from Hearthstone. And this is not like a common design. This is a particularly strange design, and it's exactly identical, even down to the flavor. I'm no legal expert, but if I was one of Blizzard's lawyers, I would be taking a look at this. Beyond that, there are still even other problems with the card file. There are a lot of randomness in these cards. One of the most common complaints I hear about Hearthstone is about how RNG focused it is, how much randomness there is. This game solves none of those problems. There are tons of random cards in the card file, and if that's something that you don't want in your game in high amounts, then I don't think this is the game for you. Now, enough about the specifics of the card file. Let's move on to talking about balancing, because this game has a particularly difficult challenge where it's aiming to be an e-sport at the same time as it's a blockchain game. A blockchain game, as you might recall, means that you can't have your assets change afterwards. This is the idea of immutability, which is one of the features that they advertise. So how are they supposed to achieve this when competitive games require good balance? Well, they're planning to use something called a balancing beta, which is a 1-month period after every set release in which the cards that you get from that set are untradeable, and they're supposed to get balance data from those matches that you get from that 1-month period, and then it's only after that 1-month period that the cards are set in stone as what they do, which means that you're probably not going to get good data about what the metagame is going to look like after the beta is over. So I really think this is going to be a whole big mess. Please go and read in the article. I go really off about this and some of the more detailed problems, but I have no idea how this is supposed to balance things properly. It feels like it's like a Rube Goldberg approach to balance, so I'm really concerned about this. This transitions well into talking about the plans of the company, because they do really seriously seem to be planning about having a competitive side. They have a tournament that they're saying is scheduled for the first quarter of 2019. This is following up from the beta that's supposed to be releasing within the next couple of months. And actually, this is actually beginning to sound a little bit like Artifact, which is another game, which is a trading card game that also has trading that's enabled online that you probably have heard about as well, that is put out by a little company called Valve. So I think this is really useful to compare these two to get a sense of the scale of the promises that this company is making. So let's line them up and do some comparison, shall we? As I mentioned, both are planning a large tournament at the beginning of 2019. Both have a beta that's scheduled for the end of this year, and both are using trading as a way to manage your collection. I should note that the scale of the tournaments are pretty similar, actually. Artifact has a $1 million prize pool tournament, while Gods Unchained is aiming for a $1.6 million tournament, but that's tied to card sales. Still, it'll be one of the largest trading card tournaments in terms of prize pool ever, if they're able to reach even close to that goal. Now that we've covered the similarities, let's talk a little bit about the differences between these two projects. For Artifact, of course, we have Valve, lots of esports experience. They run the biggest esports event of the year. Gods Unchained, I don't think that they have any esports experience as far as I can tell. In terms of the progress of the game, for Artifact, there was a playable demo that was available at PAX. There's a closed beta that's been going on for a long time. For Gods Unchained, we have a couple of screenshots, so no gameplay footage for that one. In terms of the platform these are taking place on, of course, Valve uses Steam, been around for over a decade with millions of people using it, extremely stable and well tested. Gods Unchained is using a new platform that they're developing themselves, and it's called the Apollo platform. We haven't seen that; it's not publicly available yet, and it's hard to tell exactly what state of development it's currently in. In terms of the experience of the team, of course, Artifact is headlined by Richard Garfield, very experienced game designer, a lot of other experienced game designers that are on their team with some high-profile projects. I talk about the team behind Gods Unchained a little bit more detail in the article. I mean, they seem like fine people, but I don't think that they're nearly as experienced as what we're talking about from Valve. This comparison might seem really harsh and unfair, but the thing is like these two games are aiming for similar goals. They're trying to do similar things over the next few months, so it feels like you should be able to compare them by some of these metrics, and it feels like the wattage and the power behind Artifact is just so much higher for a game that is trying to seemingly achieve more or less the same stuff. So after all of that, do I think Gods Unchained is a scam? I don't really think so. I think there's a game underneath there somewhere. It's just got some problems, such as a poor record that's for the company behind it, strange business model that I'm not a fan of, lackluster card design in terms of some pretty unoriginal stuff, strange balance decisions, overly ambitious plans, and a team that's a little bit inexperienced to bring this all together. I know that I wouldn't buy in myself personally, but everyone's allowed to make their own decisions. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and share to support the video. Comment below, let me know what you thought, if you had any questions or comments about this. Most of my content is specifically related to Artifact and Eternal, but I have a couple of videos that are relevant to a general audience, and you can see some links to those right here. My social media links are below. Thank you so much for everyone who helped make this video possible, and thank you for checking it out. Take care, everybody.